Hello, welcome to Youth Vibes. Modesty is a huge area of debate in almost every circle. Some institutions like churches have strict policies on dress code in efforts to enforce it, while others claim to give space for someone to freely express themselves. After all, it's about the heart and not what's on the outside. Well, join us in the conversation after the soulful performance from Arnold and Liz.
She is running 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction. She is trying, but the canyon's ever widening in the depths of her cold heart. So she set out on another misadventure just to find she's another 2 years older and she's 3 more steps behind. Does anybody hear her? Can anybody see? Or does anybody even know she's going down today? Under the shadow of her steeple, with all the lost and lonely people, searching for a hope that's tucked away in you and me. Does anybody hear her? Can anybody see? She is yearning for the shelter and affection that you never found at home. She is searching for a hero to ride in and save the day. So in comes our Prince Charming and he knows just what to say. Momentary lapse of reason and he gives herself away. Does anybody hear her? Can anybody see? Or does anybody even know she's going down today? Under the shadow of her steeple, with all the lost and lonely people, searching for a hope that's tucked away in you and me. Does anybody hear her? Can anybody see? He is running 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction.
Welcome, everyone, to a new week, and we have a new conversation today. We are discussing modesty, and it's a topic that I know you probably have had a few issues with. But we are here today with a bunch of friends. I will begin with you, your name and what you do, and your interests, and then go ahead, Joel.
All right. So my name is Baraka Joel. I'm a student at Makerere University, pursuing Bachelor's of Architecture. My interests, I think I like everything
Yeah.
that makes me think and try to like enjoy life in that way and not in a very educative manner. So generally, I like to read. Yeah, I like to read. I like to watch documentaries. Things of that sort.
Depth. Yes, and you, madam. Mhm.
Okay. Hello. My name is Paul. I am a student at Makerere University. I am pursuing a bachelor in statistics. Is that how you say it? Yeah.
Bachelor's degree.
In statistics.
Yes.
Yes. My interest, I love music. I love music. I love laughing. I don't know if that's
fun,
something
humor.
interesting,
Right.
but yeah. And I love doing hair. Yes, it's something I
That I
find
consider
interesting.
natural already. It's there. Right. On to you, madam. Yes.
I am Jenna Kalema. What I'm doing, I'm a student at Makerere. I'm doing a bachelor's degree in actuarial sciences. What I'd love to do, what I love to do, music, hanging out with friends,
Right, right.
and yeah, serving ministry.
Cool. So on to our conversation. We are discussing modesty. What is modesty, guys? And is there more to it than just a taste and a preference? How would we define modesty? What does it look like? Can you tell that you're modest or you can't tell? Someone has to tell you that you're being immodest. Yeah, Joel, let us begin with you, sir.
So I'll start with modesty definition.
Right.
So there's a definition that talks about modesty as being plainly about clothing and about dress and code. But I think the definition I found more like broader and more encompassing is one that points at how we dress and how we conduct ourselves. Because if you really think about it, how we dress is as a result of our conduct, and the things we hold as valuable and what we believe in. And so bearing that in mind, I do believe that there is a point where this is immodest and this is objectively immodest. Yeah, I think
Right,
not to
right.
preempt, I'll keep it at that.
Wow, cool. Any more thoughts on that? Any more additions to that? Or you all agree with Joel that indeed he has? Yeah, Jenna, what do you want to add?
I really do agree with what he's saying, but also he's spoken about how modesty could perhaps be a matter of the heart. Yeah, and that's outright correct. Yeah,
Right.
because from the how can I say it? Everything that we do streams right out of our hearts, yes? So if we're calling modesty a matter of perhaps clothes or the way someone conducts themselves, it all comes back to a heart issue.
Right.
So modesty would actually be a matter of the heart. And also to say more about that, I'd say modesty is inner self-government, yeah? Perhaps rooted in the proper understanding of who we are before God. Yes. And so obviously when we know who we are before God, it reflects as humility. It reflects in us conducting ourselves with a knowledge of the fact that, God saved me. He's brought me out of pits I'm not supposed to be in. And so I can only actually carry myself in the esteem that he's done much. And it does not seek self-advertisement or self-glorification. Yeah.
Right. But I think everything has been said, right? Yeah, unless you want to add another thoughts to the definition. But why is there so much tension around this thing? Like, why is it like it comes off like a ladies thing that somehow it's ladies who are immodest? Can men to be immodest?
Okay. I think I'll begin by touching the first question, yeah?
Right.
I'll be real. My definition of modesty, the first thing that comes to my mind is clothing.
Right.
It's
Not
clothing.
the heart,
It is
not-
how you
right.
carry yourself. Basically, that is my definition of
Yeah.
modesty. I love that these particular two people are the type to sit down and research and figure out something. Sometimes me, I just choose to base a fact of what I have been seeing.
What you've seen with the
So
person.
I do not blame the public when they have the same opinion of modesty as I have. Yeah, of modesty is dress code. Now for a guy, we all know that for a guy the first thing he looks at, like when it comes to a guy, the biggest pull or the weakness is sight, or how does the babe. So when it comes to dressing and the way they look like, a female is always the one who is affected. While a guy, can put on his shorts and his what, but what matters to a
Crocs.
lady is what he's going to say, how he says it. And so we don't particularly quantify that as
Immodest.
as being immodest.
Right.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to your head is he has bad manners, he has manners, something like that
Right,
in particular. Yeah, so I think that is why most people categorize the topic of modesty to be particular to females. Yes.
Okay, Joel, want to add something on that? Men and immodesty.
Yes. I highly agree with what Paul is bringing forth. The fact that that we as guys will perceive us as being unable to be modest.
Right.
I think this is rooted in how culture has defined what modesty is.
Right.
Many times you find that there are words we use that actually don't mean what we want them to mean, but because culture has defined them to mean that, we shape our perception, we shape our view and our definition of those words towards that. So if you look at the thing of modesty and ladies, because our culture has for so long looked at modesty and talked about modesty when bringing up ladies and dressing, and forgotten that it brings before us a much bigger thing, that the Latin word for it, modestus, brings in a picture of it actually means staying within measure, which goes beyond dressing, I believe. It goes to character, it goes to how we act around people, the things we say, the things we do. And that will affect our dressing as well.
Right. On that same note, you brought in something about culture. How much does culture define the standards of modesty? And for you, Jenna, when you think about culture, how has culture defined modesty? And is there an objective thing about it, or it's all subjective?
When you go to Rome, you act like the Romans.
Right. So
Yeah.
you
And
want
so-
to
No.
Okay.
Okay. Even if I was to go and perhaps preach in Somalia, I wouldn't go with my hair out.
Right.
No, you'd have to cover up. Perhaps even in the way that you've dressed up, you'd have to cover up, because for them, a modest woman is one who's covered up from head to toe. You understand? And if I come to Buganda and I went to the palace, a modest woman is one in a busuti.
Right.
You understand?
The garments.
And so every single area has a bar to which they'll put a modest woman at. You understand? And so culture does attribute quite a lot to the bar set for modesty. Yes? I mean, if maybe in my house, my family, my village, we've been brought up to know that short skirts and perhaps boob tubes are our culture, our attire, and so it's fine to walk around like that. It is well with me, it's well with the family. And so for the people in that region, you can't come claiming, please wear long dresses and what, yeah? And so at that point in time, we have to say that modesty does come out to be objective.
From a cultural
Yes, from a
perspective.
cultural point of view,
Right.
it does. Yes, truth is, depending on the world is a dynamic place. Yes, the world is dynamic. Things change. We're always changing to a new trend, a new bar of who's perfect, who's not.
yeah.
Yes, and so in that manner, we'd say it is subjective. We're changing according to what the world says is this. But
Right.
when you've been brought up in a certain space, there's nothing you can do. That's what the space says.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Yeah. On that bit of culture, some might argue that culture is oppressive. Culture is, why should it have the right to dictate what it tells me is modest if I want to express myself this way? Is there a way of navigating the line between this is what culturally modest and this is who I am and how I want to express myself? What should be the Christian, balance between those two things, Joel?
I think when you bring in the fact that, okay, we're looking at modesty through a Christian lens, the whole matter changes.
Right.
Because yes, someone who has grown up in a home where explicit dressing is a normal thing, they'll argue that, well, this is my culture, this is who I am. But what does scripture say about how you wear and how it influences people? I believe that modesty, as I've already said, will go beyond just dressing and go to how our characters are. And that, like, from the Latin meaning, that if you're kept within measure, you will care about how my personality, what I do will affect others. Right? And that is the same message that is brought in with Christianity. You look at when Christ talks about if your brother asks you to move an extra mile with him, a mile with him rather, move an extra mile. It doesn't necessarily only stay with helping people. It also goes to, how do I present myself? The Christian is called to go beyond what's comfortable for the good of others. And that is why it is love, the love that's the kind that Christ gave for us. He gave and gave and gave until there was nothing more to give. And so when we think about modesty through the Christian view, whatever your culture says, there is an objective bar, there is that line that will clearly be modest or immodest, no matter what your culture says.
Based on what you said about
based
love
on
and
scripture.
And humility. Paul, oppressive cultures, are we oppressing you by asking you to dress a particular way when you come to church? For example, how would you talk to someone who says, I don't like the church because they have too many rules and they sort of push it down on your throat that you have to appear this way? Doesn't God care more for the heart than for the outside appearance?
I'll start with this.
Right.
Culture, weirdly, at least African culture, has helped Africans, let me be particular, Ugandans, to have some sense, a line of sense.
Right.
In Sunday school, at least I think Baraka knows, in Sunday school there was a song, where it said J is for Jesus, and then O is for others, and then Y is for you. You. And it kind of brings us back to the fact that, you see, there's an order of rank to who is going to actually, in the end, bring the delight that I need in my life. Of Christ needs to take first place. And then others, and then me lastly. And someone shared and said that, you see, first of all, we thank God for the Spirit, because we say we are mature and then we look at others and it's like, how are you doing that? And it's still the Spirit, because there is no difference between my blood system and yours. So, the Spirit gives us this sense of maturity, or has helped us mature in Him, to know that, you see, it's no longer just about me. It's no longer just about I have freedom, let me do what I want. Like, you have been given freedom, not
as an opportunity to sin and
I don't want to go beyond, but not stupidity, not opportunity to go beyond. Okay, hat cancer mad. Like let me just do anything I want. You get, like, you've been given freedom. First of all, we thank Christ for that opportunity, because, you see, if God wanted to make robots, He would have made them. Do this, do that, wear this, wear that. I've made a choice and I'm saying, okay, I want to come to church. I want to sing to the glory of God. Okay, you want to come to church. Why are you dressing like someone who wants to sell themselves?
Okay,
you
that's
get?
a bit hard, but
if you're coming to church to glorify God, first of all, if you are coming to a place of worship, then everyone else is seen as, Dennis is my brother. He's my brother. He's my sister. Let's stand and thank God. And I'm before God and I'm dressed like this. And He's not going to stand, I'm imagining, in His chambers and be like, hey, Paul, you're not covered. You get, if I've come to a place of worship, let me have the intention of coming, I look good, But I have still come to do something of sense. There are people who are in this church and they're still human beings, I am not here to show people that, you see, God gave me a body. No. I'm here because, one, I was not deserving of what I got, and I'm here to glorify God. And we thank God because, we have bodies, but if we have come that our focus is Christ, don't come so that you become the new center of attention.
Joel, I noticed she's being too hard on the girls, on the ladies. Do you think even we men, like not women, but we as men, is it our fault that we maybe push the ladies to do particular things to draw attention, and maybe they try hard to dress how they dress and be decent, but somehow we still try and objectify them? Is that the case? Do you find that there's some merit to that? Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's our fault per se. It's a problem of humanity.
Right.
Genesis 3:16, when God is cursing Adam and Eve, particularly Adam in this instance, in the final part of the verse, after saying that you'll have birth pains, it's an interesting statement. And this is what God says. He says that your desire will be for your husband. And your husband will rule over you. And I think that paints the whole origin of this complex, is that the lady in her heart desires so much to catch the attention of the man, and the guy desires in his heart so much to rule over the lady in whichever way is possible.
Right.
That is why we have cases like murder, like rape, like domestic violence, especially towards men, and things like that. So I wouldn't say it is our fault as men. It is all our fault.
Yeah.
Because of Adam and Eve and what they did.
Right.
And so what that means is that we need to. It's not that she's being too tough on ladies.
Right.
I would say she is seeing the reality.
Yeah.
Is that clothing has a bearing on what men think.
Right.
But character has a bearing on what ladies perceive of a guy. If a guy is always doing these very romantic gestures towards a babe, leading her on, definitely
leading her on,
exactly.
And
You're
no
going to stir that up in a way that probably a lady putting on a short skirt would do to you.
Yeah,
you get. So I think this scripture really paints the picture of that divide between the two sides of modesty between men and women.
Jenna, do you want to add anything to that? Because some have said I've tried to dress up really, and tried to be decent and modest, but somehow boys still, stare at my butt or look at my chest and things like that. So how do you go about that? Like, what would you say about that? Yeah.
Okay. Truth is, when you've actually put in the effort to be decent, to be modest, it is seen. And it is equally seen when your effort / attention is towards is put towards drawing the male guys towards you, or getting them to look at your butt, or looking at all the other things you've exposed. Okay, 1 Corinthians 10:37. Surely does tell us, so whether you eat or drink, do everything for the glory of God. And so if you know that for you've done this for the glory of God, but the men are still looking, thank God firstly that he blessed you that way. But then I think things go wrong where our desire is to actually draw attention, and now we're just lying about receiving the attention, and yet our initial aim was to draw the attention. And now you're getting the wrong attention, and
you're complaining
troubled.
that you're being objectified.
So at the end of the day, the reason as to why we do things should be to glorify God. If we have that in line, then the other things fall in place.
Right. And unless there are additions there, Joe, go ahead.
Yes, something that Jenna did touch on is something to do with. She almost touched it really.
Okay.
Something
Right.
to do with the influence media has on us and what we perceive to be modest, or how we see things. Because a lady that is immensely endowed with very, I would say, exaggerated features would catch
Right.
attention,
Right. Right.
But if someone's mind was already seeking that, it will go there.
Right.
So I think us guys, because of the media, because of using sensuality for advertisement and all this around us in music and fashion, our minds have already been corrupted by sensuality. And so in every lady we see passing by, we are looking for, by the way, does this babe have a
thingy.
thingy behind that side? Or is she just in front and you get it?
Yeah.
And I think however much ladies do their best to be modest, sometimes you will be modest enough, but the mind is already corrupted.
Right.
That's why we see scripture telling us, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to see God's will, his good, perfect, and pleasing will. Because a renewed mind pushes you to love God and get your whole desire and your fulfillment fully from him. Because that is what your mind has convinced you is your source of sustenance.
Right. Pal, there is that bit. Have you been there before where you've tried your best, but it looks like, men are still getting issues with how you're dressed. How would you help that? How would you, respond to that?
Let me even organize myself.
Yeah, please do.
People need prayers.
Yes.
That's all I'm going to say. People actually do need prayers because you see, one, not all of us are saved.
Right.
Two, even those who are saved are not organized. So, like, even if you are trying, because you see, I'll be hands-on with it. I once took a judge or a border, and I was coming here, I think. So I'm on a judge and I'm fully dressed and my dress, covers. This judge guy is passing with another guy at the back, and all they seem to keep looking at are legs. So in my head, I'm like, you have legs.
Yeah,
I have legs. Like, what's the issue? What's the issue? It's just, but you are driving that direction. Why are we looking inside? Yeah. So
legs.
The thing with intent is it's not always. Last week or recently we did an episode about opinions.
Right.
And like he has shared, like ultimately it goes back to you as an individual. You may try, but other people, like them as an individual, they are dead.
Right.
Mentally dead. Yeah. So there's something, I think I'll make an excuse for the media. For example, if you switched on your TV, okay, and you're switching 3 channels, as a normal human being, the first thing that pulls you would be something that shows a little more, the chick who looks good, who has slayed to the bone, I don't know, anything, yeah? So they do it because it's the first thing that's attracting a number of people. So that would be the excuse I make for them. Yeah, doesn't mean that there's no set of clothes that can make people look modest. But you see, if I'm trying and I'm doing my best, yeah, there's a verse, I'm so sorry, data is expensive, but there's a verse where Christ was talking about, I think it's in Romans or 1 Corinthians, I've forgotten, where, he's like, even if you eat food that has been submitted to gods, it's not, but the thing is, do all things such that you do not stumble a brother. Yeah. So I'm trying. Yeah. I may not be perfect because you see, even those who put on long may put on long, sleek and slender, like tight. Yeah. I may put on, I think what we notice now today is you may put on a long thing and it's see-through.
Right.
Yeah. I'm trying. For example, the way I'm dressed now, I'm trying, but someone may say my shoulders are too out.
Yes,
My hands are overshowing. Why aren't my fingers covered? Of some
Well,
people. Yeah, so
yeah.
like Jenna said,
So some are stumbled.
if
by
you
your
are
hands.
trying, yes, it is sin.
Wear
It is
gloves.
sin because there's someone who stumbled by ankles,
Yes.
by anything. So
Right.
I am trying. Yeah, doesn't mean that every time I'm going to give you what you want, but I'm trying.
So it's about taking responsibility,
Exactly.
right? That you have you want to not send mixed messages. You have a message that you want your body to send, and therefore you dress a particular way to send that message. So if you don't intend to send that message, then don't wear in that, don't dress like that, because every time I dress like that, people think I am about this. So I think it's also important that you see what kind of messages people receive by the way you're dressed or by the way you conduct yourself. And if it's not the message that you want to deliver, because even the ones who are saying that you are free to dress the way that you want, even without caring about what the patriarchy thinks, are still using your dress to communicate a message. So you're back to the same square, that on one hand, you're being freed from the standards of dress and modesty that have been given to you from the culture. On the other hand, you still have to dress a particular way to send that another message. So so if you notice that your dress always sends another message that is not what you intend to send, then adjust the dress. Even about communication, if you notice that saying "hello, dear" to a lady means more than just a polite way of saying, then I think don't do it, because we always have that trouble, don't we, about communication and sending mixed signals, whereby someone is dating someone and they are convinced that they are dating until the other one gives them a wedding card. Right. I think on the last part, Joel.
Just something quick. There's something someone said that Christians do not have rights, but they have liberties.
Right.
And liberties come with responsibilities. Rights are something that you deserve because of who you are. So human rights because you're human. But a Christian has liberties and therefore has responsibilities over others, over themselves.
Amazing. Right. In our last conversation, we need to look at the gospel. What resources does the Bible give us for thinking well about modesty? And then also, how about those who've been abused? Because we have some girls who've been groped, you see, because the excuse is, she's dressed like that, therefore I have a right to, grope or do something like that. Like, what's the church's role and message to the girls or the people who've been abused on grounds of how they were dressed, and what's the way forward from that? I'll start with you, Jenna, and then
Okay, that's a serious question.
Yeah, it is.
But the verse that speaks out, okay, there are two verses that speak out most for me. Firstly, Proverbs 4:23. Yeah. Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring all the issues of life. People don't dress the way they dress because they just want to dress that. There's a writer who says, it's not us that wear the clothes, but the clothes that wear us. Yeah. And this is true because many times these clothes actually just depict what is on the inside. Yeah. And so we're going to say that she's dressing that way just because it's a party or what. But she's showing you what she's insecure about. She's showing you what her target is to get the men's eyes. She's showing you everything. And so when this verse says, guard your heart, it's because even before you attempt to wear that short dress, your heart has already fathomed it, thought about it, accepted it, tried the dress on, given it a heads up, and then you put the dress on. You understand? So if we as Christians can firstly guard our hearts, then we shall actually be in line with what God wills for us. Then the second one would be I'm sorry, 1 Timothy 2:9.
Right.
Yeah, that says, likewise also that women should also adorn themselves in respectable apparel.
Right.
Yeah, with modesty and self-control, not with braided hair and gold or pearls or costly attire. What stands out for me here is respectable apparel. You as a woman, what is respectable to you? What did your mother bring up as as a respectable child in you? You understand? Like, what is okay? Maybe a limit for our word, a fine line for respectable has been corrupted with the changing world. But what does God say about you? As I said earlier on, modesty is perhaps knowing who you are, your worth in the eyes of God. And so when you know I am a child of God who has given my life, meaning my fashion, my finances, everything to God, what does He say respectable is? You understand? And so when we know that, then surely I feel like even our wardrobes can fall in line.
Joel, thoughts about that? Men, and how do we go about that? Do we have a right to abuse, or if you've passed by a border stage and you're dressed in a particular way that they don't approve of, there are all kinds of things that are held at girls. What should be the way forward as far as modesty is
I
concerned
don't
for the
think
men?
there's any excuse.
Yeah.
Like you cannot kill someone who almost committed suicide
Right.
and say the person wanted to die.
Anyway. Yeah.
You get?
Yeah.
Like morally it's off.
Yeah.
You've killed someone. So you cannot sit back and say, I raped you because
You also asked for
you
it.
asked for it,
Yeah.
you wanted.
Yeah.
No.
That's-
That does not make sense. You thought about it before you did it. You considered everything. You even strategized that this is the corner where no one will see me do this.
Yeah.
This is how I can do it silently. So it is no excuse for any guy. And again, this takes us back to what modesty really is. The more we keep pushing modesty to females, we miss the point completely because we stop to look inward. That is why when Christ is telling the parable of the guy with the plank in his eye trying to remove dust from the other, the speck from the other's eye, the point there is look at your sin as much greater than someone else's, right? Until you see your sin as being wickeder, worse, dirtier than someone else's, then you will be able to help them better. So you cannot say and keep pointing fingers at that person is worse than me because they dress like this. Look at yourself inside. Look at what you think about. How is my character? How is my conduct? What are my motives? Do I go to the gym every day so that I look good? And you see, the sad thing is most guys will go to the gym, look good, and because they've worked so hard to get this body that will attract the ladies, and things don't come their way, they will use that muscle and that strength they've gained to abuse them. And so I think modesty is far, far from just dressing. It should be seen as a topic that is about hearts, is about who we are. Are we sitting before Christ? Stephen Mansfield writes a book called Maxims of Manly Men. And in it he says a man should not seek applause. Right? And so if in our lives all we seek is applause, we will sink into depression, we will sink into shortcuts, ways to get this applause. How can I get these babes to like me? Or if they're not liking me, how can I feel like they like me? Right? Most serial murderers of the 70s, the ones that raped and killed women, most of them had issues with their mothers. Either their mothers were being beaten or their mothers were abusive. So they saw it as a way of making amends, of fulfilling that. Right? They felt like this would bring me applause. You see, people in nature have this inclination to want society, to have a connection with society. Right? That's what we see. We're made in the image of God, and God is in himself society. God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And so we want that attachment. That's why people will either work so hard to be known as a bad person, a terrible person, someone to be feared, to have something rooted in hearts of the society, or will work so hard to be seen as a good person and have something connected in people's hearts. So I think modesty, like she has said, is knowing who we are before God and presenting ourselves bare and letting God transform us completely. Yeah.
Baltirabo, do you want to add anything to that? Yeah.
Before the world sees Christ, it sees you.
Right.
Okay. And the Bible clearly says, do all things as unto the Lord. Okay. So my dressing, like she said, fashion, my money, my relationship, my friends, do all things as unto the Lord. Recently I was reading Ruth, and there's a way how Ruth did her things. There was an element of willingness, of do you know someone who goes an extra mile? Like there's someone who's working for you, okay? And yeah, we greet, I do your duties, but they go an extra mile to carry you with respect of your place, yeah? And that's the place and the meaning of that verse, do all things as unto the Lord. Of this is, do everything you put your hands to, every choice you make, everything you put, your direction, or you prioritize, do it as unto someone as important as God, yeah? For the person who has been abused and they have used the way she dressed as a reason, to justify, one, court is not going to give you the comfort that you need. Yeah, even if you got what you thought you needed, it wasn't. And the only person who's going to give you that peace is Christ. Because whatever took over the guy, whatever took over you, whatever happened, the only person who is going to get you to the place you need to be at is Christ. Yes. So the way we dress matters, and I hope that as individuals we shall take it up and be firm with that decision, because it is important. It is important. That is why we are here on a show and we are not half naked. Yeah. So yes. So it matters.
Cool. Right, friends, thank you so much for being online and for tuning in. And we want to just say that the gospel offers us resources for how we ought to live our lives. And God, in his glory, did not stay in heaven and leave us to our fallen condition. And I think it's Joel who mentioned that we have had a fall. We are not as we were created. We were as we were corrupted by sin. And so God could have decided not to do anything about our salvation, but he came, became a man, put on flesh, and put on flesh to live amongst us. And then he dies for our sins. He dies for our wrongs. He does not use our wrongs. Of course, he can. He's a God of justice. He can choose to punish and judge sin. But for those who trust in him, he takes on their sin in his own body on that tree and dies their death. And then that shows us that at the center of the Christian faith is a man who is not self-serving, but is one who lays down his life for others. So I think the root behind all Christian modesty, the root behind all modesty is about that we need to think about how to serve people, even with our words, with how we dress, with how best do we glorify God first, and how do we serve his people? If you realize that the way you're dressing does not serve the cause of the gospel, Paul says that I would rather give up eating meat if it would cause my brother to stumble than insist on my rights. And he doesn't challenge the ones who are weak to become strong. No, he tells the weak to reduce or to adjust to the sensitivities of the weak. Otherwise, we could have said, meat, idols, just eat. What is that? So I think the last part of this is to say the gospel gives us resources for denying ourselves. Christ says, whoever would come after me, let him deny himself, take up the cross and follow me. The Christian call is a call to deny yourself and to follow Christ. And Christ, in his way of living, did not serve himself. He's the one who removes his robes and then washes the feet of the disciples. So in the same way, if something that you're doing, you're convinced it is right, but somehow it doesn't serve the cause of Christ, then it's not worth it. You'd rather give that up. Thank you so much, friends, for tuning in, and we will see you on the next episode. Please stay tuned in. Bye-bye.
That's all we had for you today. I hope you loved the session. Hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comment section. Send us your feedback about the show to youth and students at stfrancischapelmark.org.